Everything slows down before it changes, not because you failed, not because you chose wrong, but because the process has already begun. This is the part nobody prepares you for. The moment when movement stops making noise, when effort stops producing visible results, when the feedback you relied on suddenly disappears, you wake up and nothing feels wrong, but nothing feels responsive either. The world does not push back. It does not reward. It does not punish. It simply becomes quiet. Most people panic here. They assume silence means rejection. They assume heaviness means resistance. They assume lack of response means they broke something. They are wrong. This phase does not come before progress. It comes after alignment has already started. When a system begins recalibrating, it reduces output, not to stop you, but to stabilize itself. Think of any complex system under adjustment. The lights dim, the indicators pause, the noise drops, not because the system is dying, but because it is reorganizing internally. That is what you are experiencing. The weight you feel is not pressure from the outside. It is the absence of friction. For the first time, your old patterns are no longer being reinforced. The reactions you were used to are no longer automatic. The environment is no longer mirroring your previous identity. So everything feels slower, heavier, less responsive. This is not collapse. This is disengagement. The old feedback loop has been interrupted, and your nervous system does not know how to interpret that yet. It only knows one language. Motion equals safety. Reaction equals confirmation. Silence feels like danger because it offers no signal. But silence is exactly what allows the system to retune itself. If everything kept reacting at full speed, no recalibration would be possible. Noise would overwrite the signal, so the system quiets down. This is where most people make their first critical mistake. They try to force movement back into the system. They push, they check, they measure, they seek proof that something is still happening. But this phase does not respond to force. It responds to stability. The moment you start demanding feedback, you reintroduce noise. The moment you look for reassurance, you interfere with the adjustment. Progress at this level does not look like forward motion. It looks like suspension. Everything is still connected. Energy is still flowing, but it is flowing inward. This is uncomfortable because it removes your sense of control. You can no longer track progress the old way. You can no longer predict outcomes. The system is doing something you cannot observe yet, and observation too early disrupts it. This is why it feels like nothing is happening, because what is happening does not announce itself. The people who fail here are not weak. They are impatient. They mistake stillness for stagnation. They mistake silence for rejection. They mistake heaviness for resistance. In reality, heaviness appears when momentum is being redistributed, when energy is pulled out of old channels and held in reserve. This is not a punishment phase. It is a buffering phase. The system is preventing premature output until internal coherence is restored. You are not meant to do more here. You are meant to stop interfering, not quitting, not disengaging, but holding position. This requires a different kind of strength. The strength to remain without evidence. The strength to trust without confirmation. The strength to resist the urge to check. Most people never learn this skill, so they restart the loop again and again. They feel the slowdown, they panic, they push, and the system returns them to familiar noise. If you are here now, reading this, feeling this, you are closer than you think. Because this phase only appears when the old pattern can no longer continue. Your system has already decided something must change. It just has not revealed the shape of it yet. The quiet is not empty. It is dense. The heaviness is not resistance. It is containment. The lack of response is not failure. It is protection. If you can stay here without forcing movement, the next phase does not need effort. It emerges not with chaos, not with struggle, but with clarity. This slowdown is not the end of motion. It is the moment before direction becomes irreversible. Do not break it by demanding proof too early. Let the system finish what it has already started. You did many things right. You made changes that mattered. You stopped repeating patterns that kept you small. You held a new standard longer than before, and still the result has not appeared. This is the moment that confuses people the most. Because effort was applied, awareness was present, discipline was real, yet nothing on the outside confirms it. Instead, something else shows up first. Noise. Not external chaos, internal interference. A low-level restlessness that does not leave. A subtle urge to check. A quiet question repeating in the background. Is this working? Did I miss something? Should I do more? This is not failure speaking. This is the nervous system reacting to uncertainty. You are in a phase where the old feedback is gone, but the new signal's not visible yet. The gap between those two states creates noise. Most people do not recognize this. They think the noise means something is wrong. It does not. Noise appears when control disappears. Before this phase, life gave you constant reactions. Push and something pushes back. Try and something responds. Even resistance was feedback. Now that feedback has stopped. And without feedback, the mind looks for certainty anywhere it can find it. So it starts checking progress, checking signs, checking timelines. It starts measuring what cannot be measured yet. This is where the majority of people break their own momentum. Not because they quit, but because they interfere. They confuse awareness with observation. They confuse responsibility with control. They begin to watch the process too closely. Every small sensation is analyzed. Every delay is questioned. Every quiet moment is interpreted as a signal. The system does not respond well to this. Because the system you are interacting with is no longer mechanical, it is adaptive. It responds to state, not effort. When you check constantly, you broadcast instability, not consciously, energetically. You send a message that says this state is not safe, that this pause is unacceptable, that silence must be fixed. So the system reacts by slowing further, not to punish you, but to prevent misalignment. This is why people feel like progress reverses right here. They say everything was fine until I started doubting. That is not coincidence. Doubt is not just a thought. It is a command. It instructs the system to reopen evaluation, to re-examine coherence, to delay resolution. Most people never notice this connection. They think doubt is harmless as long as they keep going. But at this stage, doubt is interference. You are not meant to be certain here. You are meant to be stable. Certainty comes after integration, not before. What you are experiencing now is a mirror. It is showing you how deeply you rely on external confirmation, how quickly you reach for proof, how uncomfortable you become without validation. This is not a flaw. It is conditioning. You were trained to expect immediate results, to associate progress with visible movement, to equate silence with failure. So when the system stops talking, your mind fills the gap. It invents urgency. It invents risk. It invents problems to solve. And without realizing it, you begin solving problems that do not exist. You adjust when no adjustment is needed. You push when holding would be enough. You restart cycles that were almost complete. This is why so many people repeat the same transformations over and over. They get close. They feel the slowdown. They hear the noise, and they interfere. Not because they are weak, but because they do not know this stage exists. They were never told that confusion is a sign of alignment, that restlessness is a side effect of transition, that noise is evidence the old structure is losing authority. You are not lost right now. You are between signals. The old one has shut off. The new one has not fully stabilized. This is the most delicate phase of any real change. It requires less action than you want to take, and more restraint than you are used to giving. You do not need to correct the noise. You need to stop responding to it. Noise feeds on attention. The more you engage it, the louder it gets. When you stop checking, it weakens. When you stop seeking certainty, it settles. And when it settles, something else becomes possible. Clarity without force, movement without effort, direction without struggle. But none of that appears while you are still monitoring the process. This is the paradox that breaks most people. The moment you stop trying to confirm progress is the moment progress can continue. If you are feeling this right now, the impatience, the subtle anxiety, the urge to verify, that does not mean you are doing it wrong. It means you are exactly where this phase begins. And what you do next determines whether the system completes its work, not by adding more input, but by removing interference. This is the mirror. It is not asking you to do more. It is asking you to trust what you can no longer see. And that is where the real separation happens. Noise is not the enemy. If it were, it would appear at the beginning. It does not. Noise appears after movement has already happened, after a decision was made, after a pattern was interrupted, after an internal shift crossed a threshold. That timing matters. A system does not generate interference unless something real is changing. Stable systems are quiet. Static systems are predictable. They repeat without resistance. Noise only emerges when stability is broken from the inside. This is the part most people misunderstand. They assume noise means opposition. They assume it is a sign they are going the wrong way. In reality, noise is confirmation. It confirms that the system detected change. It confirms that the previous configuration is no longer holding. It confirms that recalibration has begun. If nothing had shifted, there would be no response. Noise is not random. It is structured. It follows change the same way turbulence follows altitude. The plane does not shake because it is failing. It shakes because it is passing through layers of pressure that no longer match its previous level. The shaking is not the danger. Panicking during the shaking is. Your internal system works the same way. When you move beyond a familiar identity, old reference points dissolve. Habits lose authority. Reactions stop firing automatically. That gap creates instability, and instability creates noise. Thoughts you thought were resolved come back louder. Emotions that were quiet demand attention. Doubts feel sharper than before. This is not regression. This is exposure. The system is surfacing everything that cannot move forward with you. Noise is not there to stop you. It is there to be released. But release does not happen through engagement. It happens through non-response. This is where the distinction becomes critical. Noise asks one question. Are you going to react or remain coherent? If you react, the system interprets that as a signal that the new state is unstable. So it slows the transition. It reintroduces familiar patterns. It gives you back what you know how to manage, not because it prefers the old state, but because it prioritizes stability over growth. If you remain coherent, something else happens. The noise loses its function because its role was never to fight you. Its role was to test whether the new configuration can hold without reinforcement. Think of it as pressure testing. A structure that cannot hold under pressure is not ready to support weight, so pressure is applied before expansion. The noise you feel is that pressure. It is not asking for action. It is asking for containment. Most people fail here because they misread the signal. They try to fix the noise. They try to understand it. They try to eliminate it. But noise does not need to be solved. It needs to be outgrown. And outgrowing it requires one thing that feels counterintuitive. Stillness, not passive stillness. Stable stillness. The kind that does not flinch when uncertainty rises. The kind that does not seek reassurance when feedback disappears. This is why noise only appears near real change. Surface level adjustments do not trigger it. Routine improvements do not provoke it. Only threshold shifts do. When you approach a point of no return, the system responds. It brings up old narratives. It amplifies familiar fears. It replays unresolved loops, not to trap you, but to see whether they still work. Noise is the last attempt of an outdated structure to regain relevance. If it succeeds, the system reverts. If it fails, the system upgrades. That is the reveal. Noise is not opposition. It is a compatibility test. Everything in you that cannot move forward with the next version becomes audible here. Not because it is stronger, but because its environment is disappearing. Silence was its camouflage. Change removes that camouflage. So it speaks. This is why people feel like things get worse right before they improve. Nothing is getting worse. It is getting honest. What was buried is now exposed. What was automatic is now visible. And visibility feels like intensity. The mistake is assuming intensity means danger. Intensity simply means proximity. You are close enough to the boundary that the old structure can no longer hide. If you were far away from change, there would be no noise. Life would feel dull but manageable, predictable but limited. Noise is a privilege most people never reach, because it only appears when you are about to leave the known territory. That does not make it pleasant, but it makes it meaningful. The system is not asking you to defeat the noise. It is asking you not to identify with it. The moment you see noise as an obstacle, you engage it. The moment you see it as confirmation, you let it pass. This is where control must be replaced by orientation. You do not steer through turbulence by fighting the air. You hold course. The system does the rest. If you can recognize noise for what it is, the entire experience changes. Anxiety becomes information. Doubt becomes signal. Restlessness becomes a marker of proximity. You stop asking how to make it stop. You start asking how to remain steady while it moves through. And that shift changes the outcome, because the system does not complete restructuring until interference drops below a threshold. Not zero, just low enough to maintain coherence. You do not need perfect trust. You need sufficient stability. That is why noise appears when you are close, not when you are ready. Readiness is proven by response, not by intention. If you respond with reaction, the system delays. If you respond with steadiness, the system proceeds. Noise is the gatekeeper, not the guard. It does not block the path. It marks the entrance. If you understand this, you stop trying to escape the noise. You stop trying to correct it. You stop treating it as a sign you should turn back. You let it exist without authority. And when it no longer has authority, it no longer needs to exist. That is how restructuring completes. Not by force, not by effort, but by recognition. Noise came to confirm something important. You are no longer where you were. The problem does not start with doubt. It starts with observation, not awareness, not presence, observation. The moment you begin watching the process too closely, something changes. What was unfolding on its own becomes interrupted. What was stabilizing becomes sensitive. Observation turns into interference. At first, it feels responsible. You tell yourself you are being mindful. You tell yourself you are staying conscious. But what you are really doing is checking if it worked, checking if it moved, checking if the signal arrived. Every time you ask that question, even silently, you are not neutral anymore. You are interacting with the system, and systems at this level do not respond to curiosity. They respond to pressure. The difference between awareness and observation is subtle but critical. Awareness is stable. It witnesses without demand. It does not ask for proof. Observation carries expectation. It looks for outcome. It waits for confirmation. The system can feel that difference. When you observe with expectation, you collapse possibility. You narrow the range of outcomes. You force definition before the structure is ready. This is why observation too early slows everything down. The field you are interacting with is not linear. It does not move because you are watching. It reorganizes when it is undisturbed. Every time you look into it, asking where are we now, you introduce noise. Not because the question is wrong, but because the timing is. This phase is not meant to be measured. It is meant to stabilize. And stability requires one thing humans struggle with: non-interference. Most people believe effort creates progress. At earlier stages, that is true. But here, effort takes a different form. It becomes restraint. The effort is not doing more. The effort is not checking. The effort is not adjusting. The effort is holding a state without touching it. This is extremely uncomfortable because observation gives the illusion of control. It makes you feel involved. It makes you feel safe. But safety at this stage does not come from control. It comes from coherence. When you observe, you split your attention. Part of you stays in the new state. Part of you looks back, measuring, evaluating, comparing. That split creates instability. The system reads that as hesitation, not doubt in words, doubt in posture. The field does not listen to what you think. It responds to how consistently you occupy a state. Observation weakens occupation. Every time you look for confirmation, you step partially out of the state you are trying to stabilize. It is like standing on one foot while constantly checking the ground beneath you. The checking itself is what makes you wobble. This is why people feel stuck right after they start watching progress. They say, nothing moved after I started paying attention. That is exactly the issue. You paid attention at the wrong moment. This phase requires trust without feedback, not blind trust, structural trust, trust that the system can complete its process without supervision. Most people were never taught this. They were taught to monitor, to measure, to optimize. That works in mechanical systems. It fails in adaptive ones. An adaptive system reorganizes internally first. External output comes later. If you demand output before coherence is restored, the system delays release, not to resist you, to protect the integrity of the change. This is why asking, "Are we there yet?" is not a harmless question. It is a signal that you are not settled. The field responds by pausing. It waits until your attention stops pulling on it. This is the subtle mistake almost everyone makes. They do not sabotage with negativity. They sabotage with impatience disguised as awareness. They say they are just being conscious, but consciousness does not chase results. Consciousness remains. The more you observe, the more the mind tries to interpret. Interpretation leads to stories. Stories lead to emotional fluctuation. That fluctuation is interference. The system now has to compensate for your internal movement instead of completing its own. So it slows down, not permanently, only until you stop touching it. This is why silence is so important here. Not silence of speech, silence of inquiry. You must let the process be unobserved long enough to finish reorganizing. That does not mean ignoring reality. It means not measuring what is not ready to be measured. There is a difference between noticing life and checking progress. One is presence. The other is control. Presence stabilizes. Control destabilizes. If you want to understand why observation collapses progress, look at your body. When you try to fall asleep, the moment you check if you are asleep yet, you wake up. The checking collapses the transition. Sleep happens when observation stops. The same rule applies here. The new state cannot lock in while you are watching it form. You must allow it to pass the threshold without scrutiny. Most people never do. They hover at the edge of change for years, always close, always observing, and because of that, never fully arriving. This is not because they lack discipline. It is because they do not understand timing. Observation is powerful at the beginning. It becomes destructive at the threshold. Knowing when to stop observing is a skill. It feels like letting go of control because it is, but what you gain is coherence. When you stop checking, the system regains autonomy. It completes its internal alignment. It locks the state. Only then does external reality catch up. This is why people who succeed here often cannot explain how it happened. They stopped watching. They stayed occupied in the state without questioning it. They let the system finish. And when they looked again, the change was already real. If you are here now, the urge to observe is strong. You want certainty. You want reassurance. Understand this clearly. The urge itself is the test. Not whether you believe, but whether you can refrain. If you can stop asking, "Where am I now?" you allow the answer to arrive. Observation too early collapses progress. Not because you are wrong, but because the system needs space to become real. Give it that space and do not touch it until it stabilizes. Doubt is not passive. It is an action. It may feel like something that happens inside your head. Quiet, private, harmless. It is not. The moment doubt appears, something is sent outward. A signal leaves your system. That signal says prove it. Not with words, with posture, with energy. When you doubt, you are not waiting. You are requesting verification. And every system that receives a request for verification must pause. Not because it cannot continue, but because continuation without stability would create misalignment. This is where most people misunderstand what doubt actually does. They believe doubt is a thought that can be ignored. They think as long as they keep moving, it does not matter. But doubt is not measured by movement. It is measured by coherence. You can act while doubting, and the system will still pause, because the pause is not responding to your actions. It is responding to your state. Doubt fractures state. It splits you into two positions at once. One part attempting to move forward. Another part standing back, evaluating whether it is safe. That split is enough to interrupt the process. The system you are interacting with does not resolve ambiguity. It waits for it to collapse. And collapse does not happen through argument or reassurance. It happens through commitment. This is why doubt feels heavier here than it ever did before. Earlier in your life, doubt may not have mattered. You could doubt and still progress. That was because you were operating in familiar territory. The system could absorb inconsistency. Now you are at a threshold. Thresholds amplify everything. At this level, even subtle signals carry weight. Doubt becomes loud, not emotionally, structurally. The moment you doubt, you are no longer occupying the new state fully. You are partially stepping back into the old one. The system registers that immediately, not as failure, as instability. So it pauses. This pause is often misunderstood as resistance. People say the universe is testing me. Life is blocking me. Something is in the way. Nothing is blocking you. The system is waiting for a clear signal. Doubt tells the system that the signal is mixed. So it holds, this is not punishment. It is safety protocol. Any complex system under reconfiguration pauses when contradictory instructions appear. Proceed and wait cannot be executed at the same time. Doubt issues both. Proceed because I want change. Wait because I am not sure. The system resolves that conflict by waiting. This is why doubt feels like stagnation. Not because it destroys progress, but because it suspends it. Most people think they need to eliminate doubt. They try to convince themselves. They argue internally. They seek affirmations. None of that works here, because doubt at this stage is not a belief problem. It is a posture problem. You are leaning backward while asking to move forward. No amount of positive thinking can override that. The system does not respond to what you say to yourself. It responds to what you embody consistently. Doubt is embodied hesitation. It is the nervous system saying we are not ready to commit yet. The system respects that, so it waits. This is why proof does not appear when you doubt. Proof comes after commitment, not before. When you doubt, you ask the system to show you something first, to guarantee safety. But guarantees only exist in completed states, not in transitions. Transitions require tolerance of uncertainty. That tolerance is not intellectual, it is physiological. It is the ability to remain steady while the old reference points disappear. Doubt appears when that ability is stretched. It does not mean you are wrong. It means you are near the edge of what your system is used to holding. The mistake is believing doubt must be resolved before you continue. At this stage, doubt resolves after you continue, not by force, but by consistency. You do not defeat doubt by arguing with it. You outgrow it by not acting on it. This is subtle because doubt feels like a call to action. It feels responsible. It feels intelligent, but responding to doubt feeds it. Every time you try to fix doubt, you confirm that it has authority. The system hears that and pauses again. The correct response to doubt here is neither suppression nor engagement. It is non-reaction. You let doubt exist without obeying it. That is the distinction. Doubt says wait and check. You stay. Doubt says look again. You hold. Doubt says something is missing. You remain coherent anyway. This is not blind faith. It is discipline, stability, and stability is what the system needs to complete reorganization. Think of it this way. The system is mid-transition. Parts are uninstalled. New structures are not fully locked in yet. Doubt enters and asks, are we sure this is safe? If you answer that question by stepping back, the system rolls back changes. If you answer by staying steady, the system completes installation. Doubt disappears after installation, not before. This is why people who succeed often say, I stopped questioning it. They did not find an answer. They stopped asking the question. And once they stopped asking, the system no longer needed to pause. Clarity arrived later. As a result, not as a prerequisite. This is extremely counterintuitive. You were taught that understanding comes first, then commitment. At this level, commitment comes first. Understanding follows. This is not reckless. It is how deep change works. Doubt is not an enemy to fight. It is a signal to ignore, not dismiss, ignore. Because the moment you stop treating doubt as a command, it loses its function. It quiets. And when it quiets, the system moves. If you are experiencing pauses right now, look closely, not at your actions, at your posture. Are you asking for proof? Is it you waiting for reassurance? Are you checking whether it is safe? Those are not neutral behaviors. They are instructions, and the system is following them precisely. It is not delaying you. It is honoring your signal. When you stop asking the system to prove itself, it stops pausing. When you stop doubting as an action, movement resumes. Not dramatically, quietly, and by the time you notice it, the change is already locked in. Doubt did not disappear because you solved it. It disappeared because it was no longer needed. That is the real shift. Doubt is an action, and the most powerful action here is choosing not to perform it. Checking results feels reasonable. It feels responsible. It feels intelligent. It feels like the right thing to do. But in this phase, it is the quiet reset, not dramatic, not obvious, almost invisible. And that is why it happens so often. When you check results, you think you are gathering information. You are not. You are issuing a command. That command says this state is not stable yet. This position is not safe. This transition is not complete. The system takes that command seriously because the system does not care about your intention. It responds to your posture. Checking results is not neutral behavior. It is a signal of misalignment, not because checking is wrong in general, but because timing matters. In early stages, checking is useful. You measure, you adjust, you learn, but at this stage, measurement becomes interruption. The system is no longer building output. It is consolidating state, and consolidation cannot happen under inspection. Every time you check, you pull attention back to the old frame. You reintroduce comparison. You reactivate evaluation. Evaluation belongs to the previous phase. Here, evaluation collapses coherence. The system reads checking as hesitation. It hears you say, I am not settled yet. So it does the only thing a well-designed system can do. It rolls back, not to punish you, not to test you, to protect integrity. A state that is not stable should not be locked in. So the system reverts to the last confirmed configuration. This is why people feel like they keep starting over. They say, I was so close. Then everything slipped. Nothing slipped. You checked. The moment you checked, you stepped out of the new state, just enough for the system to notice. It does not take much. You do not need to obsessively check. A single moment of result hunting can be enough because it breaks continuity. Continuity is what stabilizes change. Without continuity, the system cannot commit. Think about how habits form. A habit is not created by intensity. It is created by repetition without interruption. The moment you interrupt, the habit weakens. This phase works the same way. The new state needs uninterrupted occupation. Checking results interrupts occupation. It pulls you back into observer mode. Observer mode was useful earlier. Now it is destructive. The mistake is believing that checking keeps you safe. In reality, checking keeps you unstable. You check because you want reassurance, because uncertainty is uncomfortable. But reassurance cannot be given here. The system has not finished reorganizing yet. So every time you check, you find nothing. And finding nothing reinforces the urge to check again. This creates a loop. Check, see nothing, feel anxious. Check again. Meanwhile, the system remains paused, not blocked, paused, waiting for you to stop touching it. This is the quiet cruelty of this stage. The more careful you try to be, the more you interfere. You think you are preventing mistakes. You are resetting progress. Not fully, but enough to keep you hovering at the edge. Most people live here. They are always almost there. They get close. They feel the slowdown. They feel the noise. They doubt. They check. And the system gently moves them back again and again until they either give up or learn restraint. Restraint is the skill that completes this phase, not restraint of action, restraint of inspection. You must allow the state to exist long enough to become real. Reality does not shift because you look at it. It shifts because you stay. Staying means not checking. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means not asking reality to confirm something that is still forming. A seed does not grow faster because you dig it up. Digging resets growth. Checking results is digging. You are not wrong for wanting to know. You are human, but this phase demands something that feels unnatural. Trust without evidence. Not forever, just long enough. Long enough for the system to lock in the new configuration. Once locked, results appear without effort. People often say it suddenly happened. It did not. It stabilized quietly while they were not watching. The irony is painful. The moment you stop checking is the moment results become possible. But by the time you notice them, they are already there. This is why those who succeed seem calm. They stop measuring. They stop scanning for signs. They allowed the system to finish. Checking results tells the system you are not ready yet. So it waits, not out of spite, out of precision. If you want to move forward, stop asking where you are. Occupy the state, live from it, breathe from it, and do not look back until it becomes unavoidable. The system knows exactly what to do. It does not need supervision. It needs space. Checking results is the quiet reset, and restraint is the invisible completion. If you can master this, the entire process changes. Not because you force outcomes, but because you stop undoing them. That is the difference between almost and complete. And most people never learn it. The most uncomfortable truth comes here. You do not need to do more. You need to stop touching the process. This goes against everything you were taught. Effort is rewarded. Action creates results. Persistence solves problems. That logic works in systems that are incomplete. It fails in systems that are stabilizing. Right now, effort is not progress. Effort is interference. The instinct to do more appears because you feel the gap, the space where results have not shown up yet, the silence where feedback used to be. Your mind rushes to fill that space, fix something, adjust something, improve something, but nothing is broken. The system is already doing exactly what it needs to do, and every time you touch it, you slow it down. This is the part most people never accept, because it requires a different definition of strength, not the strength to push, the strength to refrain. When a process is incomplete, intervention helps. When a process is integrating, intervention harms. Integration requires stillness, not laziness, not disengagement, stillness with presence. You are not being asked to disappear. You are being asked to stop manipulating, no fixing, no measuring, no judging. Just hold the state. Holding a state sounds simple. It is not, because holding means resisting the urge to optimize. Your mind will keep offering improvements, small tweaks, minor corrections. Those are distractions. They feel productive. They feel intelligent. They are not needed. At this stage, the system is not listening to ideas. It is listening to consistency. Every adjustment you make sends the same message. This is not stable yet. So the system delays locking it in. You think you are helping. You are telling it to wait. This is why people feel like they are stuck in maintenance mode, always refining, never arriving. They do not realize that arrival requires stopping refinement. There is a moment in every real change where control must be released. Not dramatically, quietly. You stop adjusting, you stop checking, you stop correcting, you simply remain. This feels wrong at first because it removes your sense of agency. You are used to equating action with value. Here, value comes from restraint. The system needs to know that the new state can hold without supervision, that you are not going to interfere the moment discomfort arises. Discomfort will arise. Silence will feel heavy. Uncertainty will press. That does not mean something needs to be done. It means something is settling. Think of concrete setting. Touching it does not help. Checking it does not help. You let it cure. This is the same. The new state is curing. If you poke it, it cracks. Most people crack it without realizing. They add one more thought, one more evaluation, one more comparison, and the system adjusts backward to compensate. They call this bad luck. They call it delay. It is precision. The system is exact. It responds to what you do, not what you want. And what you are doing is touching something that needs to be left alone. This is why doing nothing feels so active here. You are not actually doing nothing. You are holding coherence. You are maintaining posture. You are keeping your attention anchored in the state without questioning it. That is work. It just does not look like work. It looks like patience. It looks like calm. It looks like trust. Those are not passive qualities. They are stabilizers. Without them, the system cannot complete. This is why people who rush never finish. They are constantly adjusting to discomfort. They mistake discomfort for error. Discomfort here is expected. It is the sensation of an old structure dissolving without a new one fully visible yet. If you try to escape that sensation by doing something, you delay the transition. The uncomfortable truth is that progress here feels like nothing is happening because nothing visible is happening. Everything important is happening underneath, and touching the surface disrupts the depth. You are not meant to optimize the transition. You are meant to survive it without interference. That survival is quiet. No announcements, no milestones, no confirmation. Just staying. This is why most people never talk about this phase. It does not give you stories. It does not give you achievements. It gives you discipline, internal discipline, the discipline to not touch, to not adjust when anxiety appears, to not measure when impatience rises, to not judge when silence stretches. If you can do that, the system finishes on its own, not slowly, decisively. The shift locks in, and only after that does reality reorganize. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped interrupting it. This is where the illusion of effort finally breaks. You realize that effort was never the missing piece. Restraint was. The people who cross this threshold do not look heroic. They look calm. They stopped doing unnecessary things. They stopped fixing what was not broken. They allowed the process to complete. If you are here now, understand this clearly. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not missing something. You are at the point where touching less matters more. So stop touching, stop correcting the experience, Stop narrating it. Stop evaluating it. Just hold the state. Stay coherent. Stay present. Stay out of the way. The system will do the rest. And when it does, you will not feel a dramatic moment. You will simply notice that what once felt unstable is now normal. That is how real change completes. Quietly, without effort, without interference. And almost everyone misses it because they could not stop trying. Do not make that mistake. Hold and let the system finish. Silence is not abandonment. Silence is stabilization. This is where misunderstanding becomes dangerous. From the outside, silence looks like passivity. No movement, no response, no visible effort. People who do not understand this phase assume nothing is happening. They assume you gave up. They assume you lost momentum. They are wrong. Silence here is not absence. It is containment. It is the act of holding a system steady while it finishes reorganizing itself. That takes discipline, more discipline than action ever did. Action is easy when feedback exists. Silence is hard when nothing answers back. And that is why silence is a high-level skill. Most people cannot tolerate it. They mistake silence for weakness because they have never learned how much strength it takes to remain unreactive under pressure. Silence is not doing nothing. Silence is choosing not to interfere. The moment you stop speaking internally, something else can align. Not speech, not explanation, not planning, alignment. The system you are inside responds best to clarity. And clarity does not come from noise. Noise creates urgency. Urgency creates reaction. Reaction creates instability. Silence breaks that chain. This is why silence anchors change. When you remain silent, you are not feeding doubt. You are not feeding observation. You are not feeding evaluation. You are feeding coherence. Coherence is what allows the system to lock in. Think about the strongest structures, they do not vibrate constantly. They do not announce themselves. They are stable. Silence creates that same stability internally. Your nervous system calms. Your attention stops scattering. Your posture settles. The system reads this as readiness, not readiness to act, readiness to hold. People who fail here do not fail because they lack belief. They fail because they cannot stop talking internally, explaining, justifying, narrating. Every explanation is a small interference. Every narration pulls you out of the state. Silence removes commentary. Without commentary, the system does not have to compensate for mental movement. So it proceeds. This is why silence feels so unnatural at first. You are used to filling space, used to reacting to discomfort, used to managing perception. Silence removes all of that. It leaves you with sensation and nothing else. That can feel unbearable. But sensation without reaction is exactly what builds tolerance. Tolerance creates stability. Stability allows transition to complete. Silence is not suppression. You are not forcing thoughts away. You are not pretending nothing exists. You are allowing noise to pass without response. That distinction matters. Suppression creates tension. Silence releases it. When you stop responding, noise loses purpose. It was only there to provoke engagement. Without engagement, it fades. This is why silence is not empty. It is active containment. It is the ability to feel everything without acting on it. That is not weakness. That is mastery. People who understand this do not rush to explain their process. They do not seek validation. They do not broadcast what they are becoming. They stay quiet, not because they are unsure, but because they know interference delays completion. They protect the process by not exposing it. Silence is protection. It keeps the system from being pulled back into old dynamics. No external opinions, no internal debates, just stability. This is why the final stages of real change often look invisible. Nothing dramatic happens. Nothing exciting appears. Just quiet. And then suddenly the new state is normal. People ask, how did that happen? It happened in silence. While nothing seemed to move, while no one was watching. Silence does not speed things up. It removes what slows them down. That is the difference. When you stop speaking internally, the system no longer has to negotiate with your mind. It simply completes. This is why silence feels powerful once you understand it. Not calming, powerful because it gives you leverage without force. You are no longer pushing against the system. You are letting it work. This is the anchor. Silence holds everything in place while reality recalibrates. Without it, progress shakes loose. With it, progress locks in. If you can learn to be silent here, not outwardly but inwardly, you cross a threshold most people never reach. They are too busy reacting, too busy explaining, too busy touching the process. You are doing the opposite. You are stepping back. And stepping back at this moment is the most advanced move available. Silence is not passive. It is precision. It is the refusal to destabilize something that is almost complete. The people who call this laziness have never held a system steady under pressure. The people who call this avoidance have never learned restraint. Those who understand know silence is discipline, high discipline, the kind that finishes things. If you are here now, do not underestimate what you are doing. Remaining silent while everything in you wants to react is not easy, but it is correct. And correctness at this level matters more than effort ever did. Stay silent, hold steady, let the system anchor. Everything else will follow. They do not announce the process. There is no commentary, no updates, no explanations. From the outside, nothing seems different. That is the first sign. People who do not break the system do not narrate their transition. They do not describe what is happening to them while it is happening. They do not seek witnesses because they understand something most people do not. Integration happens in privacy. The moment you speak about a process that is still stabilizing, you expose it to interference. External reactions, internal justification, mental movement, so they stay quiet, not because they are hiding, because they are protecting coherence. They do not search for signs. They do not scan their life for confirmation. They do not interpret every event as meaning something. They let events pass. They know that when integration is real, signs are unnecessary. Reality will reorganize on its own. Looking for signs keeps you in observer mode. Observer mode delays embodiment. People who integrate have moved past that. They do not need proof. Not because they are arrogant, because they are settled. They are no longer asking if this is working. They are living from it. This is subtle. From the outside, they might look indifferent, calm, unimpressed. Inside, something fundamental has shifted. Their posture is different, not posture as confidence, posture as orientation. They no longer lean toward the future. They no longer reach backward for safety. They stand where they are. That is integration. Integration is not excitement. It is normalization. The new state stops feeling new. It stops needing attention. This is how you know the shift is real. When it no longer requires effort to maintain, people who integrate do not rush to apply the change. They let it apply itself. Their behavior adjusts without force. Their reactions soften. Their decisions simplify. Their tolerance increases. Not because they trained it, because the system reorganized. They are no longer managing themselves. They are being managed by a more stable configuration. This is why they do not talk much. Talking would pull them back into management mode. They let silence do the work. Integration looks boring to those who crave intensity. There is no drama, no peak moment, no announcement, just a quiet sense that something is finished. People often miss this because they are waiting for a feeling. Integration does not come with fireworks. It comes with relief, a subtle absence of friction. Things that once required effort no longer do. Triggers lose sharpness. Choices feel obvious. Boundaries hold without defense. That is integration. Those who have it do not feel the need to convince anyone. They are no longer trying to be understood. They are no longer explaining why they changed. They changed Explanation is unnecessary. This is why they stop seeking validation. Validation is only needed when identity is unstable. When identity stabilizes, validation becomes irrelevant. You do not ask others to confirm what you already inhabit. This is why their energy feels different. Not louder, quieter, but firm. They are not passive. They are grounded. They are not disengaged. They are integrated. Integration creates a specific kind of presence. Unreactive, clear, unhurried. They do not rush outcomes. They do not chase alignment. They do not worry about timing. Timing organizes itself around them. Because they are no longer moving in and out of states, they are inside one. This is what it looks like to not break the system. You stop touching it because you are inside it. You stop checking because you are no longer outside looking in. You stop narrating because there is nothing to narrate. Life continues, but it continues from a different center. The outside may still be catching up, but inside, the shift is complete. This is the phase where impatience disappears, not because everything is perfect, but because urgency is gone. Urgency belonged to the old configuration. The new one does not need it. This is why people often say, I just felt normal again. That is not a downgrade. That is success. Real change feels normal once it integrates. Only instability feels dramatic. Those who understand this do not chase the next transformation immediately. They let this one settle fully. They let behavior adjust naturally. They trust the system to express the change externally in time, and it does without effort. This is why integration is invisible to those who look for spectacle. It is not meant to be seen. It is meant to be lived. If you are moving toward this phase, understand what is being asked of you. Not more insight, not more effort, not more explanation, less interference, less observation, less commentary. You are becoming someone who does not need to manage the process anymore. That is the real milestone. When you stop trying to make it real, because it already is, outside silence, inside complete, that is integration. And once you are there, the system no longer needs protection. It moves forward on its own, quietly, precisely, without breaking. This is what it looks like when change finishes. And most people walk right past it because they were looking for noise. The final truth is simple. The process does not collapse because you are weak. It collapses because you observe too early. That is the lock. Everything you experienced before this point leads here. The slowdown, the noise, the doubt, the urge to check, the discipline of silence, all of it was training you for one skill, non-interference. Most people never learn it, not because they are incapable, but because no one told them this rule exists. They believe progress fails because they did not try hard enough. They believe alignment disappears because they lost focus. They believe change is fragile. It is not. Change is robust when it is left alone. What breaks it is not pressure. It is attention applied at the wrong moment. The system you are inside is precise. It does not punish. It does not reward arbitrarily. It responds exactly to input. Observation is input. Checking is input. Doubt is input. When those inputs arrive before stability is reached, the system pauses. Not forever, just until interference drops. This is why progress feels like it collapses suddenly. It does not collapse. It resets to the last stable configuration. That reset is not a failure. It is protection. A system that locks in an unstable state creates damage later. So the system waits. The painful part is that waiting feels like loss. You think you lost momentum. You think you went backward. You think you ruined something. You did not. You touched it too soon. This distinction changes everything. Once you understand this, you stop blaming yourself. You stop searching for missing steps. You stop trying to fix what is not broken. You realize the task was never to force progress. It was to stop interrupting it. If you learn to not check, you move ahead of most people, because most people cannot tolerate uncertainty without action. They cannot sit in silence without explanation. They cannot stay in a state without measuring it. So they interfere, and interference delays completion. You do not need exceptional discipline to succeed here. You need restraint. The restraint to not look, the restraint to not ask, the restraint to not measure. That restraint is rare, not because it is difficult, but because it feels counterintuitive. You were trained to monitor everything, track everything, optimize everything. This stage does not respond to optimization. It responds to trust expressed through behavior, not belief. Behavior like staying quiet, like holding state, like letting time pass without demand. This is why those who finish often cannot explain how they stopped watching, they stopped narrating, they lived, and while they were living, the system completed the work. By the time they noticed, the change was irreversible. This is the destination, not a dramatic outcome, not a visible milestone, a locked state, a point where the system no longer needs protection because it is stable. From there, reality adjusts naturally. Opportunities align without force. Decisions feel obvious. Resistance drops. Not because you earned it, because you stopped interfering. This is the final inversion. Doing less creates more. Checking less creates certainty. Silence creates movement. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. You realize how many times you almost arrived, how many times you reset without knowing why, and you stop doing that. You let processes finish, not by pushing them forward, by stepping out of the way. This does not mean disengaging from life. It means disengaging from premature control. You still act when action is required. You still decide when decisions are needed, but you stop hovering over transitions. You let them integrate. That is maturity at this level. The destination is not a place. It is a posture that says, I will not touch this until it is real. When you adopt that posture, the system recognizes it, and it proceeds quietly, precisely, without needing your help. This is the final lock. You no longer confuse attention with support. You no longer confuse monitoring with care. You understand timing, and timing is what separates those who repeat cycles from those who complete them. If you take nothing else from this, take this. The system knows how to finish. Your job is not to assist it. Your job is to not interrupt it. If you can do that, everything else happens on its own. Not magically, not mysteriously, mechanically, cleanly, correctly. You do not need to believe this for it to work. You only need to stop checking, and when you do, the system will do what it was always designed to do. Complete. That is the destination. And once you are there, you will understand why silence was the final instruction, not because there was nothing left to say, but because nothing needed to be done. The process did not collapse. It finished because you finally let it.